Hey, good morning from Kansas City, and welcome to SportsBeat Live, the weekly show where we talk about the Royals, whether they're in first place or not. Say they're not. Our conversation happens with those in the media who know them best, and it's usually a foursome with beat writer Lynn Worthy, along with columnist Sam Mellinger and Vahe Gregorian. But we take attendance. Well, hello, Vahe.
Well, I'm glad we're going to proceed with two pillars, Blair. We'll see how the rest come in.
Do something, that's for sure. As we speak, Lynn Worthy is 30,000 feet over the earth, making his way to Detroit, where the Royals play tonight. And Sam Mellinger is on assignment. So, Vahe, it is just you and I, but there's plenty to talk about. And look, we hope to do so with you folks watching today. Bring your good stuff. You usually do. A team that's lost 8 straight, there's always plenty to talk about. Hey, before we get into the Royals discussion, let's thank our sponsor, the University of Kansas Medical System. Great to have KU Med on board, and we'll hear from them later in the show, along with Royals manager Mike Matheny and maybe even a player or two. All right, Vahe, let me run down a few numbers before we get started. As I mentioned, 8 straight losses for the Royals. They've gone from 16-9 and in first place to 16-17, under 500 for the first time this season, and third place behind the teams that swept them at Kauffman Stadium this past week, the Indians and the White Sox. They were outscored by the White Sox 21-4, a number that I got from your column, your latest column, Vahe. And the only competitive game in that White Sox series was the 3-0 loss on Friday, where they had the bases loaded in the 9th inning, gave themselves a chance, but couldn't get it done. So, Vahe, in, 25,000 words or less, what is happening to the Royals? Last time we talked, they had lost. Remember, they had lost 2 out of 3 to Minnesota. They'd started that stretch of games against the AL Central, and we're thinking, boy, if they could just kind of stay competitive in this stretch of 17 straight against the AL Central, maybe play 500 or a smidge higher, maybe either way, game above or below, they'd be in great shape. But oh my goodness, 8 in a row, 9 of 10, and just not looking good at all.
Well, just first things first, Blair, in the interest of 25,000 words or fewer, the peanut gallery down here in the kitchen, where the only really good Wi-Fi is, suggests good luck with that. But I'll try to keep it tight. The thing is, here's the thing, and we've had a lot of moments together, Blair, lately, covering the game together Friday night, and then yesterday with just getting to listen to Tom Watson and George Brett talk about the nature of streaks. And, we know these things happen in sports, and baseball is kind of particularly prone to it, but they don't have to be this way. And as we think about the 8-game losing streak, it would look a lot different if they won the 2 or 3 games they were kind of in position to win, right? A couple really, really bad bullpen moments, a lot of runners left on base, games that could have gone a little differently. And then maybe you can live a little bit better with the 9-1s and the 9-3s that just sometimes kind of happen. But instead, you're leaving Kauffman Stadium on Sunday, and you could tell once they got down, I think it was 3-1 in the second inning, I had no sense they were going to come back. It just felt like a flattened kind of hollow team. And, maybe we make too much of this kind of thing sometimes, but I do think the day off does them well. The change of venue does them well. I do think that what we need to remember is this team isn't one or the other. It's not the 8-game losing streak team. It's certainly not the 16-9 team fully. It's both sort of all at once. And what comes with that is, the need to watch every game and, see what comes next. I don't feel like, the season's toast. I mean, we're talking about 80% of the season left. And this 8-game streak, when I did the math the other day, it's 4.94% of the season. I mean, in the long run, it needn't be defining at all, right? But in the short run, you sure want to get past this horizon, and you got to see some tangible things happen. They've got to have just smarter play, better defense, better bullpen performance. Need some production from Dozier and Soler in ways that they're not consistently delivering. And as we both sort of perked up to hear George Brett say yesterday when we were speaking to him at the Joe McGuff ALS event, try easier. You know, that really stands out with Soler, doesn't it, for instance?
No, that's right. Absolutely. You know, to a couple of your points, Vahe, the narrow losses during that 8-game losing streak came after the Royals had won their first 6 games this year. They were 6-0 in one-run games to start the year, and I think the streak had been the winning streak of leading after 7 innings was up to 60. And they've now lost their last 2 games. Maybe it's just one, but I know that streak ended during the it was a one-run loss to the Indians. So, you know, just when things go bad, everything seems to go bad. It happens, like as you said, in all phases. I think David Wright captures the mood when he says, "Boo, no more sports." Yes, I think when teams on an 8-game losing streak, you tend to feel that way. I know where you're coming from. David.
Yeah, Blair. To that point, I thought about this a little bit in something I was working on last night. You know, and I keep harping on our time with George and Tom yesterday, but think how interesting that is. That you know, in this case, there really was only a TV camera and the two of us talking to George Brett and Tom Watson for a half hour. And you know, they got talking about last season, and George was telling the story about, you know, as a vice president for life, being allowed in the stadium when fans weren't allowed, and sitting up in the upper deck by himself watching the game and getting, I think he said it was his first foul ball.
Yeah. He didn't catch it in the air, right? It rattled around some seats, and he went over and picked it up.
Yeah, he waited for it to safely settle in. But the exchange between them at that point was something that I try to remind myself of, you know, just how crummy it was to be playing that season that way. They did the best they could, but playing that season that way with nobody in the stands. And I was just thinking, like, okay, is an 8-game losing streak preferable to that? I think maybe it is. At least it's real, and it's not. Again, we don't know that it's ruinous at this point. In fact, you know, it's completely premature to say that it would be ruinous at this point. But it just made me think about that contrast. Like, all right, well, at least we're playing ball in front of the fans that want to go now.
And speaking of which, we were both out there Friday night for I think it was 16,000 plus. The largest crowd that the Royals had to date, and I added another crowd similar on Sunday, I believe. So I'll tell you, the Royals fans have done a great job of spreading out, but making it look like you know, stadium not half, you know, we less than half filled, but you know, it just looks better and it feels better. And you know, you wish there had been more success for the fans that did come out to the ballpark for the last homestand. The Royals increased their capacity to, I think it's 17,400 right for the moment, right?
I think so. And you know, and this is probably another entire discussion sometime, but it really is interesting how the dynamics of this have worked, whether it's some pricing things or some COVID considerations still in terms of walk up and things like that with the crowd. I mean, they came home leading all of baseball with that 16-9 record, and they had a chance to have 17-4 that night, that Monday night, with Daniel Lynch making his major league debut, and they didn't have 8,000, which I thought was interesting. Then by the weekend, you know, things were kind of more like what you might think they would be. So it'll be interesting to study some of that. I think we were joking Friday. I think it was Friday night that we understood the crowd had a little more youthful element to it right away when Whit Merrifield hit a pop-up and the crowd went crazy thinking it was going out. That was a sound I hadn't heard for a while, right? The overexcited youngsters. It was kind of neat.
Well, I do think, and maybe somebody out there can remind us that tickets are still not available day of game. That it's still, there is no walk-up sales for Royals tickets. They have to be purchased in advance, which explains why weekend crowds might be better than the weekday crowds. Normally they are anyway, but I think it may be easier to plan for a weekend ball game than it is for a weekday ball game. And yeah, I think that on another night when a player, especially a pitcher, is making his major league debut, there'd be some buzz and some excitement, and people would want to be part of that. And the crowd was a little on the disappointing side that night. So, okay, Vahe, you and I have talked about this, but let's hear what Royals manager Mike Matheny has had to say. This was after Sunday's game, which made the losing streak 8. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is well, we'll know in a moment. I think it's your question that prompted this response from Mike Matheny.
Mike, you kind of alluded to this, but when you're in this kind of streak, you're dealing with a lot of different things. And I suppose pressing might be one of them. What is it you're seeing in that sense with these guys right now?
Yeah, Vahe, I'm not so sure that pressing's always a bad thing. I mean, I see pressing and urgency almost as the same, as long as it's controlled effort and you don't have pitchers on the mound trying to overthrow. That's pressing. We got guys that are coming out and making pitches. We got guys who are taking some pretty good at bats. It's just we're not able to put a lot of things together, and it does seem that when we make a mistake, it gets amplified. So it's a bad run. Part of the conversations I just keep having, and I had again with the guys yesterday, it's just a reminder this was a really bad week. We're going to have some really good weeks. It's not our last bad one. It's just how do we continue to play the game and try not to let it linger too much. It's hard to let them go though when they all stack up, just like I talked a couple of days ago about not having a run scored. It you want to fix it. Can it add to guys taking bigger swings than what they ought to? Maybe so. But overall, it's just something we're going to have to put our head down and keep fighting and realize this is part of the game.
Len Jennings.
Hey, Mike, you just touched on this a little bit, but is there something maybe that you do to make sure that these guys don't lose that belief and confidence that they had at the start of the season?
Yeah, Len, it's something we keep talking about. They're probably just sick of hearing me talk about it, to be honest with you, but it's something that makes sure they understand that we as a staff believe that this is the kind of team we are, and but also reminders that we've got to do things right. We've got to figure out ways to win. That's how we've been so far. And to keep pointing out the positives like we've already talked today, you're not just blind optimism, but when you're doing something well and the results might not be there, we got to focus on them. With that in mind too, when we do make mistakes, we just got to keep working. We've got to keep working, keep teaching, keep learning. And this is a group that's been very open to that, and it will pay off in the long haul. But none of those things are a quick fix. There isn't a quick fix, except we got a day off, and then we fire our spikes back on and get back in there and fight. But that belief that you're talking about, it needs to be reinforced with the positive results. We know that, but remember that the process is what's the most important thing through this 162 game season. That you got to stay with it.
Okay, good stuff. I thought from manager Mike Matheny, and I got to tell you, Vahe, through this 8-game losing streak, I've been impressed with his public comments, from explaining the losses and being honest, as honest as he can be, right? Not being critical, but telling it like it is for the most part. I think he's handled this as well as a manager can.
I think so too, Blair. And I think what stands out to me is kind of not running from the points of criticism, but also not belaboring them, right? And looking for the way forward. I think he's got that ability to project this kind of healthy blend of constructive criticism and accountability while staying upbeat. And I think I think that's pretty cool. I mean, we see it as it's relayed to us, and thus as we relay it to our audience. I have no reason to think it's different in how it's, transmitted in the clubhouse. And I got thinking as I was listening to him, sometimes when you're listening and working to write it and process it for what you're working on, you shrink wrap it and you don't hear it as well. But I'm struck often by the things he says as being useful to apply to my own everyday approach. Like, yeah, I better just keep grinding. That one didn't go so well. Just kind of work it through. And I always laugh at the term "the process" because it's so pointed, it's so true, and yet it's kind of mundane, right? And we hear it from different people. But Mike's big on the process. And I had a little extra chuckle right as he was saying that, because I recalled we know how much Dayton Moore likes to talk about the process. And Dayton took some criticism for a while when the Royals process wasn't quite coming through. And I remember Sam Mellinger teasing him in the press box one day after they won the World Series, suggesting to Dayton that he should get a T-shirt that says, how do you like my process now? And Dayton didn't even dignify it with a comment, just kind of grinned at him.
I got to tell you, Sam Mellinger is one of the great T-shirt authors of all time. If anybody could whip up a slogan for a T-shirt, it's Melly.
Sammy Hustle, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's take a break and hear from the University of Kansas Health System. And when we come back, right out of this break, we're going to hear from Royals utility man and infielder outfielder Ed Merrifield.
The Kansas City Royals lineup is backed up by the region's strongest team in healthcare, the University of Kansas Health System. We both suit up with one goal in mind: to win. The University of Kansas Health System, official healthcare provider of the Royals.
Okay, so maybe not. Maybe we'll get Whit queued up and ready to go here.
Hey, Whit.
Let's do it.
Hey, Whit. Where do you feel like? I guess, do you feel like you guys are in sort of the same place, different place, than sort of coming into this series? I mean, it's a long season, but it seemed like things were going in one direction with the road trip, 6-3, had a little energy with Lynch getting ready to take over, and then after the sweep, where do you feel like you guys are at?
Well, I mean, do you think it was going to be peaches and roses all year? We're gonna go through something like this at some point, and you find out a lot about a team and a lot about the men in there when you get punched in the mouth. And we got punched in the mouth this homestand or this past series, and see how we can respond, see what kind of team we got, see what kind of men we got in there.
Sam?
Yeah, I mean, just a follow to that answer. I mean, what do you expect? What have you seen so far from your teammates that makes you expect a reaction one way or the other?
Well, when things go well, I see guys that are working to fix the problem, not just crumbling and sulking. Guys are getting after it and trying to make adjustments and trying to put themselves in position to succeed. And in this game, that's not always going to happen. But all you can do is understand the problem, do your best to address the problem, and make adjustments to fix it. And we got a bunch of guys in there that are grinding to do that because everybody in there wants to win, and that's the end goal. And you got to put yourself in the best position for you to succeed individually in order to help this club win. And we got guys that are grinding through it. We got some guys that are struggling a little bit, but like I said, there's no sulking. There's no just sort of caving. Guys are fighting to get better.
Peaches and roses. Not going to be. Isn't that great?
Blair, you being from that part of the country a little bit, I mean, did he mean to say peaches and cream? That there's peaches and roses a thing?
Yeah, I think so. Mixed his metaphors a little bit, but that's okay.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And I keep thinking about that line ever since. It was a great way to get into it. As it turns out, we have a peach tree here, and it does not bear much fruit. Otherwise, I was thinking of bringing a couple of the ballpark for the press box the other day to, lighten the mood for everybody. But Cindy says they're not even ready. Anyway, just a quick aside about him. I don't know what he's going to do after baseball, after he plays baseball, and I hope he plays another decade. But I'm really interested to see what Witt does later, whether he becomes a broadcaster or a manager. He's so smart and so to the point, and yet articulate with it. The wit and wisdom of Whit Merrifield. It's good stuff.
It is. The Royals are now experiencing the pits and the thorns instead of the peaches and the roses right now. But Vahe, it's funny when you look at the Royals roster, and I just thought about this. You break it down. You've got players on this team that understand what winning championships are like, especially in the Royals uniform, right? With Salvador Perez and Danny Duffy, Gerard Dyson, back on the team. You have another group that really didn't go through the 100-loss seasons of the previous, the previous couple of years. Guys that are really new to Major League Baseball. Daniel Lynch is one of those. But then you've got this other group, probably the largest group on the team represented, of players that missed out on the championship years and have had to endure the 100-loss seasons and now are trying to fight their way out of this. Whit Merrifield, Hunter Dozier, Brad Keller, Jacob Junis. I mean, it's a long list of those guys. And when I think about when the Royals were going through their great April run, I was thinking, boy, this will be great if they can get to the playoffs, and guys that have endured the crappy baseball of 17, 18, 19, will get some success, and now they're having to fight through this 8-game losing streak. But I like what Witt said about these are guys that have been punched in the mouth, and we'll see what we're made of. But remember, keep in mind, he said that after the final loss in the Indian series. They hadn't even played the White Sox yet. And, of course, they dropped 3 in a row to the White Sox.
Well, surely he really was talking about, the next day. But really, it holds up going forward, right? I mean, and in a certain way, it's all the more so now, right, after you've really gotten drubbed around. And now's the time to show a little bit of what they're made of. I don't know we were talking about this a little bit the other day. I don't know when a losing streak number becomes the end, right? It's not 8, might be 21. We saw with the Orioles a few years ago, or might be 16. I think that's the Royals' longest. I don't know what it is, but they got to plant the flag here and just get a win. Just get a win. Detroit seems like a good place to get one. And then I think things look different just with one win. And then you go to the next day. It's pretty simplistic, but it's a very interesting point you're making, though, about the guys that have had it, have had the highest of the highs, and then all the guys that are, a lot of the core of the team that have not enjoyed that. And are obviously hungry for it. And now you've got this kind of influx of, the really new guys. And it made me want to flip this on you, Blair. I've thought about this before. Do you see, I wasn't here yet. I didn't come till 2013 from St. Louis, but 2011, 2012, you started feeling some sense of, flip the switch, right? I think that was what Dayton called it when he called up Hosmer, Operation Flip the Switch. Like Hosmer, Moustakas, Sal, Duffy, all those guys sort of in the same time frame. What's this like to you compared to that?
And that was 2011, of course, the year that the probably not ready, but you went ahead and lived with the mistakes in those years. One of the problems with that was there was a promise of 2012 being the breakthrough year for the Royals. There was a lot of excitement in town. The Royals were hosting the All-Star game that year, and the former first-round draft picks like Moustakas, were going to join Gordon and Perez, guys that were just a year or two ahead of them, and now they had the makings of of a team that can make a run. And 2012 turned out to be such a different disappointment. And of course, we've mentioned this too. That was when the Royals trotted out the "our time," slogan, which promised results and couldn't deliver. That brings us to 2013. There's a little bit of promise. They go through the tough stretch, bring George Brett on the coaching, to the coaching staff to help get things turned around. And they did get things turned around. 86 games in 2013 that set the stage for 14 and 15. So it's a fair question, and it's worthy of deeper exploration. How much does this feel like the 2011? You're at the doorstep. I think this team has more established stardom and proven players than that were on the Royals roster in 2011, and the young pitching is better. So I don't know. I think it sets up for the Royals maybe to end up being the team we all thought they were going to be, somewhere between 72 and 78 wins when it's all said and done. With by the end of the season, seeing players like Bobby Wood Jr., maybe Asa Lacy, Jackson Kowar, and setting up maybe a playoff run for 2022. But boy, April got us all excited, right? The Royals are ahead of schedule, and let's think in terms of what can they do, what kind of trade maybe can they make this year to get another bat in the lineup, or to get the starting rotation stronger. What could they do? And an 8-game losing streak will sober you up quickly.
Yeah, no doubt. But you do make me think about this now, and this is probably my opportunity to get off the hook for when we made those predictions, being the one who said like 85, 86 wins. Everybody else was like, So I should probably take this opportunity. But I'm going to go on a limb and say I think this season is going to end up being more like 2013 than 2012. It's just a gut feeling. I think for a lot of the reasons you described, there, regressing to the mean in some cases here means that some of these guys, reverting to the mean, I should say, that some of these guys are going to have a lot better numbers pretty soon. I think. And we got to see what's going to happen with the bullpen. Right now, that's my biggest concern. How demoralizing that is to have a couple of those games you could have won and just frittered away. But I do feel like there's more advanced things in place, as well as some of the promise of the future with some of these guys. So I'm going to cling to the hope that they're still a plus 500 team by the end of this season.
Boy, I tell you, the bullpen looked so good early, and Josh Stamont was aces. Steve Hogan asks, speaking of the bullpen, what's the latest on Zimmer and Hahn? Of course, Hahn had the shoulder impingement, and Zimmer with the trap injury. I think they're actually closer. We might see him. I don't know this for sure, and I think we'll get more information today when Lynn speaks to Mike Matheny in Detroit. I'm sure that'll come up, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them back pretty soon, at least Zimmer.
And there's an interesting thing with that, Blair, and it's something I've thought about in terms of Mondesi too. It's not just that you're missing these guys. It's kind of how it reorders everything else. What Zimmer and Hahn were gave them. I know Mike has used the bullpen in different ways, but it gave them a little bit of a sense of order to what they were going to try to do, or what he felt his options were. And I think the same thing with Mondesi. If you get him back, I don't exactly know. I don't think we do know what the personnel implications will be, how they'll play everything from there. But you're going to shore up the defense right away, which needs that, right? Even if it's just a twitch more, a little dimension better, that changes some things. And it also changes what you expect out of which part of the lineup at any given time. So we'll see, right? And that's still probably, in talking to the Royals on Sunday, they thought there's a chance we'd see Mondesi by the end of the month, but I don't think anybody was even guaranteeing that. So it's still a little ways out.
Well, what it would do, first off, is move Nicky Lopez to the position that he's more comfortable. Second, I think he's an average defensive shortstop, but he's an excellent defensive second baseman.
Yeah.
And then you're right. They'd have to make some other decisions with what to do with the batting order, whether Nick even stays in the lineup at that point. All right, Vahe, let's start to wind it down. Let's do some numbers here. 2 for 29 with runners in scoring position over the last 3 games, which is just abysmal. Just abysmal. I think they're hitting over this 10-game 1-9 stretch. They're 160 with runners in scoring position. But the other number that just freaks me out is the Royals are 10 games under 500 against the White Sox in 2020 and 2021, and they're 2 over 500 against everyone else, including the Indians that just swept them. It's just an incredible stat, right? That the White Sox are not, they're not scared of the Royals. That's for sure. And after Detroit, the Royals go into Chicago for 4 games. The good news there is after this 4-game set with the White Sox, the Royals will be halfway finished with the Chicago end of their schedule. They'll have played 9 or 10 games against the White Sox. They'll only have that many games left over the second half of the season. But boy, it's just a brutal matchup for the Royals. And the White Sox are even injured, right? They've got a couple of outfielders that they're counting on, not with the team. So the White Sox have helped set the tone for this losing streak that the Royals are.
It is interesting. When you crunch the numbers like you just did, it makes the White Sox seem all the more imposing, but it also tells you if you could just get to some kind of not even winning ground, but some kind of competitiveness against the White Sox where you're winning 1 out of 3, or occasionally you win a series. I feel like whatever they do in Detroit, Friday in Chicago is a big deal with the doubleheader. Just kind of a statement day. I mean, you go in there, you get flattened and swept. Oof! It makes me feel like they'll lose all 4 if they get swept on Friday, and that's silly. It's probably not an indicator, but the 2 for 29 is interesting too, Blair, because it's horrendous, but it also shows you that they're not getting no hit. They're not getting runners on base. And I think as bad an indicator as that is, it also suggests, you scratch together 7 of 29, or, you get a couple more extra base hits like they've been cranking out for a while. And that looks a bit different. So it is funny. It's another one of those cliches, right? It's never as good as you think it is when you're rolling, and it's never as bad as you think it is when you're. Well, sometimes it's as bad as you think it is.
Yeah, I think this is bad.
What's another Sam Mellinger witticism from Buddy Bell? I think it was during that, whatever that was, 16 or 17 game losing streak. They'd lost like their 11th, and Buddy Bell said, "Never let them tell you can't get any worse."
Sure enough.
So here's hoping that doesn't come into play for our town and our squad here.
Right. Okay, Vahe, I know you are heading off on assignment as well, and we'll definitely talk about that next week. Wanted to thank you, Beth Welsh, our producer, and Monty Davis, who was the assistant producer today, along with the University of Kansas Health System for sponsoring us. And Vahe and I referenced the George Brett conversation we had yesterday. That's available on podcast, the entire George Brett and Tom Watson conversation, where they discussed, among other things, the Royals and the slump and what those two guys did when they were, what they needed to do to get out of, slumps that similar to what the Royals are in right now. So check that out on kansascity.com. Also, all the Royals coverage, kansascity.com, and the print editions of the Kansas City Star. Thank you very much, and we will talk to you again next Tuesday.